Hmm? I think Debbie
Linda.
Small.
Linda Connors.
Yeah.
Nancy,
Did you call yourself?
can you give her that? That's the list. All right,
Yeah, I did
Okay.
call Linda.
Call yourself?
It's similar here.
There you go. Stating the obvious.
All right. That's everybody.
A recalc, so Guanacini. Here. Norm Bucko,
Present.
John Parsons.
Here.
Michael Coltman,
Here.
John Sasso. Mark Doxer. John O'Neill. All yours.
Is there a good place I should stand or not be here? Do you want us to start sharing the PowerPoint? Yeah, let's start with the PowerPoint and then I think everyone on Zoom can see me too. So great to see so many people here tonight. This is fantastic. What I was hoping for this evening, what we were hoping to do is go through some conceptual plans. So some plans that aren't quite the level of having furniture in them and windows, but have the basic spaces laid out, adjacencies, to give you an idea of how the buildings work and to get feedback about whether they are working. The PowerPoint that I have tonight, it's the same as the handouts you have in front of you. I'm hoping that the slides with the plans are large enough you can read them. If they're not, to the people that are home on Zoom, let me know because I did make a second PowerPoint with the plans even larger. So I'm hoping that between one of those PowerPoints that you can see what's going on. So the three sites, we have Pleasant Street, the existing site, we have Simon's Way, and we have Oakland Road across from the high school. Those are the three sites we're focusing on tonight. For Pleasant Street, we've gone and done 3 concepts. For the other sites, we've just done 1 concept. And the hope is to narrow down those 3 concepts of Pleasant Street so we can focus on 1. So I'm going to dive in. Please raise your hand or on Zoom or in person if there's anything that doesn't make sense or you just need any clarification. So the first concept for Pleasant Street, and just to back up a second, for Pleasant Street, we were looking at 3 kind of basic core ideas with laying out a center. One was maxing out parking, because we realized that parking is a need, if you will. 2, making that parking as convenient as possible. So right now, when you're entering on the lower level to park in the back, having to go up a level in effect to get to everything that's going on in the building is kind of inconvenient. So we were trying to make it as convenient as possible by getting the programming and the parking all at one level, or at least the most important spaces at the level of the main parking. And then the last idea was basically maxing out the site. How can we get the most out of it and try to meet the program that we've established? So I know that we've talked about the idea of looking at a community center with dedicated senior space or a senior center. Right now, we're saying we're going to try to give you everything on this site. So a community center with a full-size gym and the dedicated senior space. We're going to give it a try and see what you guys think. It's aggressive. And that is the first concept. So in this axon here, what you're seeing is the original building, the red brick building in the upper left-hand corner. You've got the 2 abutters, the 2 houses that are closest to the building. You've got the small house back on Parker Street, and then you've got the multifamily house on Pleasant Street. And then everything else in white is a new addition. You can see how much larger it is than the existing building. This concept, again, has a full gymnasium, and that's one of the reasons it's so much bigger than the existing building. In the first 2 concepts I'm going to show you, they have a 2-story parking garage. They have a parking garage with a level at Parker Street, and they have a parking garage with another level at Pleasant Street. And then they have building above that. So that's what you can see here. You can see that there's a ramp that's taking you down to the lower level of parking off of Parker Street. And then above that, there's another level of parking that's on grade with Pleasant Street. And this is going to look a little similar to what Gynap Architects had proposed in the layout of their parking garage. Zoom on to the next. This is just a little conceptual, again, the theme of tonight is going to be conceptual. idea of what that might look like, to see that there's construction, that there's a building above parking. We could put some kind of wall in the front with what I'll call punched out fake windows to make it feel more residential or more contextual with the neighborhood. We could go something modern and super and all glass, but this is basically just the massing. So the idea that you've got the existing Pleasant Street Center all the way over to the right. You've got some kind of what I'll call a hyphen, which is a connector portion of the building that's connecting the original building to then this new addition that's all the way over on the left. And that new addition all the way on the left is built above parking. So,
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Yep.
So going back to that picture.
Yep.
I want to make sure I understand it. So
go back.
there's 2 levels of parking.
Yes,
One is the current level.
Yep.
And the other is built on top. And then that 3rd level is the program space.
exactly.
Got it.
Yep. So the lowest level, and I have all of these as plans too. So my hope is to go through the PowerPoint, and then if we want to look at the plans in person, we can. I can leave them behind, but we have them as a reference. So on that lowest level, you've got the ramp that's taking you down to the parking garage. That has about 26 parking spaces. That has 4 to 5 accessible spaces. We can certainly have more than that. But so in comparison to what you have now, you have about just under 30 parking spaces, I believe, in the existing parking lot. So this is close, not quite as much, but close. Then at this level, you have in light tan office space. So this would be an office suite with most of the staff. The idea is that when you're again coming out of the parking garage, you've got your main core services, your staff, your social services. You have some additional bathrooms, which they're small boxes in gray. And then you have the fitness room at this level. Now, could you have the fitness room at the upper level and another program room down here? Certainly. Most of the program rooms are similarly sized. They're all about 1,000 square feet. So we have those options. In this concept, I'm showing the fitness room down here because it's good to have staff near the fitness room in case anything happens. In all of these concepts for Pleasant Street, you're going to see that the lower level of the existing center, which is that gray box with the gray outline, that gray outline represents the existing walls. And in these concepts where you're seeing a renovation concept, existing is going to be a dark gray. That's going to represent a dark gray wall or a dark gray window. Anything in white with black outlines, that's a new wall. So here you're seeing in the basement, it says mechanical/storage. The reason we're saying that right now is because the ceiling height that you have right now in the basement is just meeting code. And so we think it might be challenging to use that again for program space. And we realize it's not the best place to put program space anyway. It's not very attractive. We certainly could look at using that for more than mechanical or storage, but right now we're assuming almost a worst case scenario that that's what it would be. You still need a lot of mechanical and storage in these buildings, so it definitely would get used. But that, I think that it would be nice if that we could somehow use that. It'd be nice if the floor was lower, if we had more windows, if it was really an attractive space suitable for programming. Okay, so that's the lower level. Then and on this level you have an elevator and a stair. So you would hop in that elevator and stair if you want to go up to the main level on Pleasant Street. And that's the next slide. So this is Pleasant Street. So to get into the parking garage, you take the ramp down to get to the Parker Street elevation, or you use an entrance off of Pleasant Street. But the 2 levels are not connected. So in a traditional parking garage, you would come in, you drive around one level, see that there's no parking, and you drive up to the next and continue and continue. In this design, if you came in off of Pleasant Street and you saw that there's no parking, you'd have to turn around, go down to Parker, go on that ramp, see that there's no parking down there, go across the street to the municipal lot. It's a worst case scenario. I'm exaggerating a little, but you see the flaws of this kind of parking garage layout. It really would not work to introduce a ramp that connected the 2 levels. It would just eat up so much space, cost, etc. But there are ways to overcome the fact that those 2 floors don't communicate, if you will. You could have a tax write-off attendant who, puts a placard out front that says parking lot almost full. You could have valet parking where, the valet parks everyone down at the lower level. There are ways to think about making the parking concept more functional. So at this level, the Pleasant Street level, the idea is to put all of the core really important spaces at this level. So in this concept, we're giving you a multi-purpose room, by basically gutting the entire first floor. You're taking out all the walls, the kitchen, the stairs, the elevator that exists right now on the first floor, and just creating one big open space. And then introducing an addition at the back of that, so you have one space, it's about 2,600 square feet. That's actually a little bigger than the program we have right now. We're aiming for 2,400, 2,500 for a program, for a multi-purpose room. So it's a good size. Has storage, and most importantly, it's connection to a kitchen. So you have the kitchen at the back corner, and I'm just gonna point this out on the screen. You have two pass-through counters. You have a pass-through counter here, so you could have a dining activity like breakfast or lunch, and this could be the buffet area where you're taking your meal. And then there's another pass-through area here, which could be like a grab-and-go counter where you have coffee and muffins and sandwiches, and then you could eat them in this lobby. You have, I'll just point out, this is the elevator and the stair, and they're gonna take you up to the second level. So.
What was the total parking space?
So it's 24 in the lower level and 27 on the second. So about 50. So then on the second level, you have the rest of your program spaces. And again, all the program spaces are similar, or all the program rooms are similarly sized. So if you wanted the fitness room up here, you could move it up here and put something else down in the basement. And they're all represented in the pink color. And in this concept, you have a dedicated lounge space. So in addition to the lobby downstairs, you have a lounge space up here, soft seating, TV, tables and chairs for playing cards, that kind of space. And then lastly, I'll note you have additional office space. So again, you have eyes on the second floor. I think it's important to try to have office space on all floors. And then you have the gym in the yellow, in that mustard color. This is a 6,500 square foot gym. So slightly smaller than what we were aiming for. We wanted 7,500 square feet, in large part to accommodate bleacher space. But the way that a parking garage is sized, you're kind of restricted to that, the dimensions that I'm showing here. It's still a regulation gym. Still has the same number of pickleball courts that the other gyms I'll show you had, just doesn't have bleacher space. So this is the first concept. I'll say concept on steroids. Any questions on this one before I move on? Yeah,
I can't read the office suite, is that 600 square feet?
600 square feet, correct.
Okay.
Yep,
It's not on the slides, right?
it's not, yeah, this one I had
Okay.
made them, yep.
I have a question.
Yeah,
This big office space?
so there's multiple office spaces in this concept. On each floor, there's some form of office space.
Do they not have windows?
No, they will have windows. At this level of design, we're just showing walls. So we're being conscious of the fact that we should locate certain things on the outside of the building. Like we'll locate bathrooms on the inside because we don't really care if they have windows, but we're not showing the windows that you would want for offices at this point.
So are you showing 5 office spaces here?
So it could be, the reason I'm not labeling those is I put the walls in so you can get an idea how the space is configured, but that's not ironclad, if you will. Like this concept here, it shows that you have 1, 2, 3 offices that have glass. Maybe this is a break room on the inside or a storage room for materials. Maybe this is an open concept office where you have cubicles for volunteer staff. It could have many forms. And I think that's what we get into that like next level of design maybe once we kind of zoned in on a concept.
In this concept, how many office spaces are you showing?
So this meets the program. So I believe the program was for 6 offices and a conference room and a break room. Is that,
What's not being shown here is the program sheet that
yes,
you
Yeah.
did to try to allocate out the different requirements.
exactly. Yeah. And the reason I did that purposely because I don't want us to get fixated on numbers.
Understood.
Any of these sites will work for what we need. They're, again, I'm pointing at the limitations that they arise, like the gym wouldn't quite be big enough for the program. Yeah.
I remember discussion about the break room, but I'm assuming that if more room is needed elsewhere, that's like low priority. And it could be used for something else.
Yes.
I don't really remember a break room as being integral to the whole space.
So a break room is
Original discussion.
I think it's nice to not forget staff and,
I do too, but they're gonna all have offices and they will have more space, so I'm just saying that if more space is needed for program space, I'm assuming that the break room is something that can be negotiated.
a low priority.
What size are these?
They're about 100 square feet, about 10 by 10. So like size,
10 by 10?
Yep. That's about the standard size for a bedroom. We do a bedroom, an office. No, a bedroom as well. It's like a,
Most offices now, we're in bedrooms, so.
I'll give you a point of reference too. No, I was gonna joke that when we do like corporate interiors, like a C-suite office might be like 200 square feet or something like that, but that's getting that, I'm sorry, Chris, that's not your cards.
We have a, sorry, we have a question on.
Yeah. Michael?
So I was wondering about the gym on the second floor. Have you thought about the floor to ceiling height requirements for a gym and how that would work with the roof lines of all of this?
It would pop up, you're right, that a gym, the ceiling spring height is around 20 feet, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the basketball nets are high enough.
Right.
So what we would probably do in this concept is the gym portion would be higher, but then we would try to keep the rest of it lower, so it was more in keeping with the original building and everything that's on the street.
Great.
I
Thank
just
you.
really wanna, yeah, put an asterisk next to it. This is being aggressive. I don't know if this is the option that we would go with, but I wanted to show you what is possible. I was talking with someone today and I was like, possible and feasible, those are cognates, they mean the same thing, right? So that's what our job is here, is to say what's possible.
And would the gym include the walking track above it in this concept?
In this concept, probably not. It could, we could look at that if that was important. But that would mean that we'd have to have a separate set of stairs. It might be more challenging there. Usually what's nice with those walking tracks is they are accessible from the second floor. So they kind of timed, like here you'd be coming up a whole other level that would be by itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And going back to the break room thing, if there's a break room on here, it might actually have to be more office space if more of us move over there.
Yes,
'Cause
in
right
this
now there's-
concept, yeah.
How many staff do you have over there total now? I think it's
Yeah, you're right.
So
The 6 staff, Jenna, you're right. The 6 staff was for senior center only,
yeah,
but you have the 600 square feet there, which would
for extra
Yeah.
space. Yeah, so that makes sense for like, a potential 6 more people if it's a community or more of us just want to move our offices over there, even if it's a senior center. What about the We want some sunshine. We want to be out of the basement.
Do we have any, that we talked
Come on,
about,
yeah.
like, places where people could go and sit, for seniors to go and sit and socialize and have a cup of coffee? And if I'm interpreting this correctly, on this being a community center concept, I don't see that here. I see anybody and everybody in the lobby, and yeah, sure, you could go there with a cup of, but I don't see those nice little spots. I
Okay.
saw the lovely pictures of it in other places.
That's a good question and a good point. Yeah, so the what's in orange is generally those social congregation spaces. So you have the lobby level here. What I didn't point out is this is a double height lobby space. So in other words, on this, if you go to the second floor, you could look down below and like, so you're upstairs waiting for a program to start in the gym and your friend's running late and you can see that, oh, she just came in. So it's nice to have that visual connection. The lounge on the second floor is shown kind of open to the gym. If we said, oh no, that needs to be more dedicated for a senior space, we could definitely look at how we, do we put, nice transparent glass doors or something more opaque. That is something that I do think is a flaw, not to use a harsh word with this concept, is that it doesn't have that segregated senior space that some of the other concepts you might see have. Doesn't mean I can't get that. This is very good feedback. The direction I'm hearing is for this to be viable, you would want to have more of a kind of like wing or separation or way to cordon off key or senior center spaces.
To me, I think
Yeah.
that gets at the essence of what a senior center is. The other question was about the big room. A challenge we've had in that big room, as I understand it, is showing movies and things because the light is not conducive to getting it dark enough and all those good
With the big
things.
doors.
Yeah, because of the big doors. Do we have a place where we're gonna have that problem go away? And
Well,
we
that
could-
might be a nice space for the basement. We
where,
could have like a nice media center down in the basement.
it might, but even presentations, someone from the town comes to talk about something and they want to show slides, and we want it dark enough so people can see it. It's an issue, my understanding is now.
Yeah,
And I speak on hearsay since I haven't spent much time there myself.
no,
but
it's an
I've heard it a
interesting,
lot.
it's an interesting point that you have these really large openings. How do you close them off sufficiently?
I wouldn't give up those windows, that's. the-
No, I don't think you could either.
Yeah,
You're talking
light
before about
and
historic.
windows
I
and-
think those are
I
non-starter.
think they're beautiful, but we
Yeah.
do need a place where we can do those kinds of things. It's
Yeah.
an issue now.
So maybe we could look at like,
Maybe
you could have beautiful large barn doors almost on the
Glass.
inside that close over those doors or something. We could come up with some kind of
You
really
can't change
nice
sizes.
architectural,
Something. I just,
Yeah.
I think it's an
Maybe
important
we can-
activity that we need to be able to support somewhere.
We are also, in that point, we are looking at a projector and screen that works better with daylight. That way, you have to be careful because if you make it too dark, people
Yeah.
can't see where they're going.
Yes.
So I prefer more light. I prefer investing in a better projector and screen so we can keep clients and patrons safer
Good idea.
with light.
Maybe better shades and blinds.
yeah, there's definitely,
Yeah, something is my bottom line. I just wanted, I wasn't seeing.
The program that was done today is a prime example of how that's needed, that's all.
do you guys want to see the next concept?
Can I,
I'm
can I?
sorry, Rachel, I have a couple of questions.
No, go for it.
Sorry. So just wanted, some of the, this is, I think will apply to all these. So just to the, when you have on this table, the unoccupied area, that's your mechanical downstairs, okay.
Yep.
So I'm assuming, I mean, obviously based on the way that this site is set up and what you're proposing, you're not proposing anything new, at least from an outdoor space utilization perspective?
We could look at that. We haven't shown anything yet. Like there are some limited opportunities depending on the concept,
Right,
like in this back area, but not a lot. Like that ramp kind of
right.
takes up a lot of your
It
open
does,
space.
it does.
Yeah.
And then, so the reason I'm asking this question is the next two questions relate to,
Yep.
where are the entrances to the building in these, in this particular configuration?
So you could have an entrance or a lobby off of the lower level parking garage.
Okay,
But then the main entrance would be off of Pleasant Street if you go to that second floor plan. See that, where it says entry there?
okay,
That would be a vestibule. All these concepts have a vestibule just because they're nice in terms of climate control.
You can actually see in the picture, the street picture. you can
Yeah.
actually see.
The glassy front entrance.
so,
Yep.
so from the
Yeah.
perspective of pickup and drop off,
Yeah.
like with the van,
Mhm.
can it fit in the basement?
Can the van fit in the,
In the lower level?
Yeah.
So you could structure it so there could be a pickup drop off down there for that,
yeah.
Because
like you-
right now, it's like, you can't really do it very well on Pleasant Street, or at least it's not an easy thing to do, and plus you actually, in the covered parking garage, you address a weather issue too, to some extent.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. No, you could, and so there are elevations noted on here, 0 being Pleasant Street. So in this concept, in order to get the floor to floor height of your lower level parking garage structures, next time you go in a parking garage, look and see how like deep the beams are. There's a lot of structure in them. We would actually have to go down about 3 feet lower than the current parking lot elevation to make that work.
Okay.
I want to stress with all of these options showing a parking garage, there's a lot of work that goes into that parking garage.
I believe it. And then the other thing is, where the kitchen is on the first floor,
Yes,
so what about loading dock? Or,
we could do like when you conceive of a loading dock, we could do something like that. Generally, we don't. I'm not saying we can't, but generally we don't. Generally, we just provide a means at grade to get to a dumpster. And we can talk about the details about how frequently the trash will get picked up and what that might look like.
I know there's a little bit more detail, but I'm just trying to conceptually understand, what that might look like.
So it's like basically the, what's the word I'm looking for?
Access,
Surface entries.
Yeah, service entry, let's say that.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's one concept I'm going to show you where the kitchen is on the second floor, which I honestly think is a throwaway scheme for that reason. It's like, how do you get the trash out of the building? Yeah, you have a dumb waiter, which I think is probably not the best use of money.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Just a question. unfortunately, and it'll carry through, but, and I think it probably is easily fixed, but I was just doing the math on a lot of these rooms and ones that are like 800 square feet. And I looked at the numbers of what they currently are and they're sort of around 700 square feet. But the new one's also gonna have storage and the new one presumably is also gonna be much better designed for handicapped accessibility. So I'm wondering if those rooms really are gonna accommodate that many more people. You know, we're looking at another 30% growth in population of the people over 60 in the next 10 years, and not all those people will come here, but a proportion probably will. So I'm concerned that I'm not seeing a design that incorporates doors. You could expand one room into two rooms if you
Okay.
wanted to. I think that would solve it personally, but I would like to see a lot more flexibility of the rooms being joinable, because I think it will become an issue pretty quickly.
Yeah, several little rooms. You're better with 4 large rooms.
Yeah.
Several, you could say I have a 7-room house. Well, they're all rinky dink little rooms. What good are they?
Yeah, but you do have the big multi-purpose room now, and you do have the entire gym. For a big space
But
and a
that's
fitness
huge.
studio.
I'm thinking like, suppose we get double the number of people who want to play bridge. You
Right.
know, I'm not talking 100.
In a
extra
game room, you
people,
mean?
But I can't see that moving and taking up the multi-purpose room. And in the past, but maybe now that it extends bigger, I'd heard that we couldn't do any kind of subdivision of the big room because of the windows.
It is really challenging.
Yeah. So to me, I would put accordion doors or whatever it takes between a bunch of these small rooms.
Okay.
You can always make them small again, but
Yeah, certainly.
this way you can also make them bigger.
What about noise from one room to the other?
So those
It would
partitions
have to
are,
be solved.
yeah, those partitions usually are pretty robust acoustically, if you will. But yes, good question.
Even sliding panel doors, I mean, something just so you could expand.
One of the things that I learned early on about those petitions
Mhm.
is there's low-grade petitions and there's high-grade petitions. And we really would argue for a high-grade petition for just that reason that Karen mentioned. Otherwise, you really could still only have one activity in that room because it would be too loud.
Agreed. Acoustics are always a concern.
And I think that's important to include in there, because otherwise it doesn't make the rooms usable.
Yes. That's something you don't see.
Especially now if I see great place, which.
Yeah, you never know. Okay, second concept? Okay.
Wait, the reception desk, the reception desk.
You've got an
what's that white
unfair
area?
advantage. You've got that big plan right there.
This white area here.
That's a check-in desk. So that's where you'd have my senior center computer. That's where you'd have a big counter and a nice height for people to come in and say, hey, I'm here for whatever class. Where do I go?
So the reception desk is exposed to the lobby
That's right.
and the lounge area.
Yep.
Because the reception desk should be totally independent, heating, cooling, wiring, all up-to-date computer equipment and soundproof, because right now it interferes with everything, where it is right now, Pleasant Street Center. It's a constant interruption.
Yeah, I could see how it is because it's in a program room in essence. It's not in a.
Or even in a lounge room. I mean,
There are different ways to do, sorry, to cut you off. There are different ways to do reception desk. You can have one that's out in the open. You can have one that has like a sliding, like in a medical office that has a sliding door. It's a little more private and discreet. In terms of square footage, they're gonna be about the same and take up, want to be in the same area, which is like right there when you're coming in up the street.
Back part of that, is that a doorway to these
Two
office
offices.
suites?
Yep. So you
So
probably have,
people who occupy this office suite go in and out that way?
yes, that's not too uncommon though. If that's something that you don't like, we can look at updating that. Like, it's a good, no questions or bad questions. And just because I say we've done it before, doesn't mean that's the right way to do it.
When people are entering via the lower level, it looks like there's a little lobby there.
Yes.
I'm assuming that it's probably not going to have a receptionist there. So, at least in the short term.
We could look at that in this concept. It's an inefficiency, if you will, unless we're talking about the full community center concept where you've got recreation and senior center staff. And so maybe this is the lower level is for Chris and staff, and you have a receptionist down here, and then upstairs on the main level, it's the volunteer or recreation staff manning that reception desk full time. I could see different ways of doing it. But you're right, that you don't want to walk into this lobby and not be greeted by anyone. You have two lobbies, that's how this one works out. So I'm gonna write that you thought the office area on the second floor was kind of tight.
I
so you had
think
to
it's
go through.
small.
Yeah,
10
It is
feet
small.
by 10 feet. Well, they're gonna be in little chipmunks and something.
And see, Rosemary, I am just the opposite. I think 10 feet by 10 feet is fine.
yeah, you don't have that.
It's like a door.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good sized office.
Once it has a window.
And what we would do. So, no, it's okay. So these tiles, if you want to reference, these tiles are probably 2 feet by 2 feet.
These are 2x4s on the ceiling tiles, so you can, figure it out.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's it.
It's fine.
Yeah, it is fine. That would be larger than.
It depends on the specific office, right? If you have an office that you want somebody to come in and visit all the time, then that's versus somebody that's just an office for themselves, they're the two completely different things, so. I think we actually did try to address that.
10 by
in the-
10
in
and
the
you don't
space
have
requirements.
windows. It's like a.
But you do have windows. I'll make that clear. There wouldn't be any offices that don't have windows. Sometimes there'll be conference rooms that don't have windows because you don't really necessarily have a need for that. But the offices would all have to.
Rosemary, if it's too big, you're gonna stay too long.
Anyway, you got-
Okay, let's move on to the next one. They're all gonna seem very similar to a certain point, these concepts, they all have garages. So in this one, this is the multipurpose room on the second floor. Like I said, it's pretty much, maybe dead in the water, because you also have to have a kitchen on the second floor in order to work with that multipurpose room. But I'll run through it quickly, and maybe there's something that jumps out at you that you like about it. So here's an axon basically showing it. You can see that the building, the parking garage is still the same, but the building is slightly smaller, because it doesn't have that very large gym. So in this concept, there's really nothing on the lower. There's just an entry space, and maybe you have an office to greet people. You can go up to the second floor. And on the second floor, that's where you have most of the offices. So most of the offices are on that main level. That is very convenient to Chris and his staff. And then instead of having the multi-purpose room, you have two of the more popular program rooms. You have the fitness and the gross motor or dance room. And then I'm also showing on this level a conference room, about 200 square feet, about this size. That maybe that's where the visiting professional is. So you could see that being a very popular, well-used space. So you're coming right off the street and you say, where do I go for the podiatry clinic? No, it's right here, right off.
Could you go up there and point those out?
Yeah, sure. So this is the main level. Again, the same entry point off of Pleasant Street. So you have a vestibule, a double height lobby, a conference room with glass off of the lobby, a receptionist that's meeting you as you come in the door. This back here would be the main office suite, all with windows. And then these are the bathrooms that would accommodate this level. And you have two of the more popular program rooms on this level, the ones that are the physical activity spaces, if that makes sense. Parking garage is the same in this concept, has the same number of parking spaces and it's configured the same.
2 levels.
2 levels, the same way to get in now. Yep.
Just a staffing question and where it would all go. And right now, if you had a rec department and it seems like you essentially have 2 different reception areas, they'd have different literature. I mean, it's not that it couldn't all be combined, but it's 2 different areas of knowledge and support and all of that. I think, personally, I think it's asking a lot for one, it would be a different role, but it could be done, but I think it's a very different role from the scope of what a current receptionist is handling. And potentially we've got 2 lobbies going on. I just know if this has been thought through substantively. We got a lobby that's going to handle all the rec questions and a lobby that's going to handle the seniors center questions and how that's all going to work out. Maybe fine. I don't know. I just
That's a
wonder.
good question. Let me throw something out. If you had one really big reception desk where you had 2 people from both departments, would that?
Maybe. I don't know. I just.
But the utilization is gonna be at different times too, probably.
To a degree. We're going to have
Well,
19
it's not gonna be any-
people for the senior center.
Hey, folks, I know, just to chime in for a second, Chris and I had a chance to go to Randolph the other day.
Oh,
No.
Mark,
hold on.
Mark,
Nancy, Marilyn, Mark's, this will be good for you.
Okay.
So
Go ahead,
Marilyn, hi, folks. Chris and I had a chance to go to the Randolph Senior Center last week. And that is actually a combined community center, senior center.
Yep.
And they do have a central lobby, singular lobby, and they have, you know, different literature, different things, and the people are handling all the customers coming in. And they found that even though they have specific hours, these are senior only hours is the way that they had it set up. It kind of worked out pretty naturally in terms of when the focus areas took place. Not exclusive, but focused, and it worked out fine. And it was that singular lobby area that handled it really nicely. So
Okay,
just to give you an idea that, it is possible, and that's an example, I think, of one that works pretty well.
okay. I've seen it in Lexington. When I went there, they have a general huge lobby,
Yeah.
but then for senior center, they send you off to the senior center lobby.
Yeah.
So it
Randolph
goes
did it-
different ways.
Randolph did it nice because it was just kind of a desk maybe twice as long as this table.
Big.
And
Yeah.
seniors were on the one side, rec was on the other. And then they also had some dedicated hours during the day that was just for seniors, 8 to 2:30. It was just for seniors, and then after that,
The whole center is only available to them?
for senior, well, and then after that, kids come in, but seniors could still use it too.
Yeah, it's,
Is this space big enough for that, for Randolph's vision?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Randolph has a gym, that's gonna be one of the.
But I mean,
different-
the lobby, is
Yeah.
the lobby big enough to do what Randolph does? I'm just asking, have we thought it through from the full range?
No, you don't be
Okay.
apologetic about your question, it's like, these are good questions.
Okay.
In addition to that, we all self-check in. We all have our little tags and self-check
Yeah.
in.
And I will say, access control is gonna be a limitation when you have two entrance points. Like, I know that you could do my senior center as like the remote check-in and that kind of thing, but it's always best to have one access point where everyone comes in and you can, control, not to sound dumb, but access that way.
I feel like that's what's kind of nice about concept two here is even if they come in on the bottom floor, they really can only go upstairs to the lobby.
Yes.
So with
Yeah.
concept two here, so even though there's two entrances, it's nice because they come in and they just have to go up.
They have to go up, yeah. And then I just want to point out, because this doesn't have a gym, I would consider this the senior center only concept.
That was my question.
Sorry, I should have said. So let's go up to the upstairs. So the upstairs, this is where the multipurpose room is on the second level. And again, I think the fact that you have to have a kitchen up there with it really is an inherent flaw with this concept. But it gives you a beautiful lounge that's connected to that multipurpose room, so you can see what those adjacencies are like. Like, if you could do this on the ground floor, we would, but it takes away a lot of parts. We did do a concept like this. We showed this last week. Yeah, and then this one has a nice terrace in the back too, which I think is kind of nice. Yeah.
Do we have a place for people who like drove someone to the senior center for class and they just want to hang out while someone is doing whatever?
I think that would be the lounge space as well.
Well,
In
you
this
get pretty
concept,
busy.
that's what this is showing, but I'm hearing you say that you want a separate space for caregivers.
I want sufficient space for it to be comfortable for whatever the use might be, including place for someone who's a caregiver, even just a ride. I don't know if they're a full-fledged caregiver, but.
Yeah, but I don't think it needs to be, my own personal opinion, is that it doesn't need to be a separate place. It can be a
Okay.
place where, as long as it's big enough.
Yeah, so you do have the lobby in this level. If you
Yeah.
want to go back down to that.
Yeah.
Because there'll be seating there too. But I'm gonna write down the question is, or statement needs sufficient space for a pro-social space for non-seniors.
Companions.
That would be a good question for Chris too, because how often does that happen now? And where do those people go and how many of those people there are?
It-
Not that we're gonna answer it now, but I'm just thinking we can base it on. And I know that Maryland, it's gonna grow, but
No,
I
it's
just,
not even that it's gonna grow, it's that how many people don't come because there isn't a place.
Exactly.
We don't get a whole lot right now. We get some like scuttlebutt. We have a couple people who, wait, or they walk downtown here and do their, pick up their prescription at CVS and stuff like that.
I just want something that would be obvious to people I'm welcome here. Like,
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
people, but I just want something.
That lobby's 500 square feet. That's 25 by, I mean, like 20 by 20. It's a
pretty
good
big.
size. It's
Yeah.
a good size.
This is 400 square feet.
Yeah, this is,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Is it
sometimes the
400 and
companions
now
are like
they say
with
it's-
the person that their companies too.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good point.
Lunch or at a program.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step over you.
No, go ahead.
But the point that you're saying that like people can run their errands because of the Pleasant Street's location.
Downtown.
So
Yeah.
it might mean something different for the Pleasant Street design than the design out.
Yeah, like they don't have
Right.
to do something else.
I think, I think what's more important is not necessarily companions, but what our issue now is like, when we have a big event, people come early. And it'd be nice to have a place for them to come and be while we get ready for that event. You know, and I think that's more of the key. It's not necessarily, you know, someone coming and waiting. It's okay, when people come, do they have a place to be while they, you know, they don't have to be rushed out, or
Right.
they don't have to be a sardine.
Yeah.
That's more of, I think, the critical piece.
People come early to find a parking spot. That's why people come early. And want to get into the banquet hall early. So the parking spots on the 2 levels, with the 2 levels of parking that we're talking about, will that provide us with more parking than we have now? I'm not only talking about the parking lot we have now, but where we park all around on the streets. How
Wait.
many cars do you think we actually have every day?
So you gotta remember, with these, you still have the street parking too. So like in this model, you have 24 spaces, 27 spaces, so double what we have just in the parking lot. Plus 5 or 10 across the street in that parking lot. And then on the street, you have about another 10 probably, give or take.
So we'll still have street parking.
We wouldn't, I mean, you'd lose maybe 1 spot there with this driveway.
Yeah, you would probably lose 1 parallel spot. For a senior center only concept, we would aim for a minimum of 70 parking spaces. And that's really driven by the size of the multipurpose room. Imagining a big banquet event, what you know, your surge capacity. For a gym, we would probably ask for another 20 parking spots, so 90 to 100 for a community center with gym. So in both scenarios for Pleasant Street, you don't have that minimum amount of on-site parking. So I want to point that out. That is a challenge of this site.
Let's talk about the gym. Is it a dedicated spot just for people go to have weights, or
It's like a basketball gym, like with a court and.
why are we adding a basketball court when we need spaces for active center, for offices and for entertainment and for storage? We need storage desperately.
So I think the intent of showing
When
it,
did a basketball court get in there?
so again, I'm gonna sound, I don't mean to sound, using the word typically, I don't mean that to that sound offensive, but it's become very popular to have gymnasiums as part of community centers to promote the active living value of the community. And also it's an intergenerational space, and it's also a very flexible space. You can have a lot of different things going on. You can have pickleball all times of the year. You can have basketball for JV leagues. It offers a lot of different segments of the,
Is that room going to
Community.
be soundproof?
would the gym be soundproofed?
When you're talking, you're mentioning pickleball a couple of times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be, I think most of that impact noise, like the sound of a basketball hitting the floor or pickleball, that's gonna cause issues to someone below you.
Oh, boy.
Usually not.
Well, should it be the parking garage?
But exactly, exactly. That's a really
We-
good matter.
Randolph, when we were on Friday, it was actually pretty interesting because they had a full gymnasium with a walking track. And when we were there, they actually had the full gymnasium as pickleball courts. And all the pickleball courts were filled and they were playing pickleball, and probably 10 or 15 people were up on the track walking around it. And now that I recall, actually, when we were touring the place, I didn't hear any pickleball. Because we were talking out in the hallway and just looking at rooms, and I didn't pick up on any of the noise, and it was pretty well insulated.
Mark's off mute, so.
Yeah. Just to reiterate what Chris is saying, and all the rooms had doors, right? So you've got the gym blocked off with doors, and then the individual rooms are blocked off with doors also. So, we saw other things going on. And by the way, there was a lot of other sports going on in other rooms too. They had kind of Tai Chi in one of the big rooms. They had ping pong turned out to be a really big thing going on there, and really competitive, scary.
So,
Oops, sorry.
no good.
I think the key to remember is don't get caught up on a basketball court. Think of it more as a multi-use court. It's probably a better way to look at it. I mean, we automatically say, hey, it's a gymnasium and gymnasium goes to basketball. Well, that could be volleyball, that could be pickleball, that could be basketball, that could be soccer, or that could be
You just
You
bought the
can have
portable bocce
classes
court.
there, Stu.
portable
Like
bocce.
Y has classes in their gym.
Yeah.
Yeah, one other thing would like to mention. Not only could it be a gymnasium and basketball, whatever, but years ago at the Y, we were given permission and we turned the basketball court, the gym, into a function room.
Could
We
be
brought in tables, we had an auction there
Senior
and.
prom. Senior prom.
And that's what we did, so that's something also to look at.
Yeah.
And consider.
Multi-purpose.
It is a multi-purpose space. I think I was saying basketball just to give you a vision of like what type of space we're talking about, that it's that traditional image of a gym that you like that you have at a high school or another school. And I just want to stress, we're showing you that a gym would fit on this site. That does not mean that you want a gym on this site.
Also a gymnasium is a lot of times a really good source of income. I know when I worked for the Malden YMCA, I had a church group that played huge indoor soccer on Sunday evenings, and they paid, I don't know, a couple $100 every Sunday to play. So it is a pretty, brings in some income, which can be really helpful down the road.
Do you need special permits to rent out a place like that?
Oh, yeah. People would need
Rec
to
does
get
it all the time.
insurance.
Yeah, right.
The rec does it all the time.
We do with fields.
Do you want to see the last concept?
Can't resist just one thing. I'm
No,
busy.
no.
In the movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Can there be anybody's man? You can never see it. And the gym floor opens and the swimming pool's under it. Can we have that? I still want my.
Marilyn,
Someone's
No.
gonna close the floor on me while I'm in.
Hey, Jimmy Stewart can have it, we can have it.
So in this last concept, you want to go to the next slide. You have the multi-purpose room back on the main level, Pleasant Street. It's smaller. It is 1,900 square feet within the existing footprint of the existing building now. Doesn't have the addition on the back. What it does have is a lovely kitchen that again is associated to a generous sized lobby lounge space. And then on the second floor is all the program rooms.
This is senior center.
Yes, and this is senior center only again. You have offices up on the second floor as well. You have a conference room just on the main level. And this one is the smallest of all these centers, all these concepts are ranging. I believe this one is around 12,000 square feet or 13,000 square feet. And the gym one is about 26,000 square feet.
Parking stays the same.
And the parking stays the same.
I see the kitchen, I think, I didn't bring my magnifying glass, but I think it's around 700 square feet in all of these. Is that a commercial size kitchen?
It is on the lower end of a commercial kitchen.
But it is a commercial.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can see the little subdivisions, not to get into the weeds, but I love laying out conceptual kitchens. Those are like the walk-in cooler and the pantry.
All right.
Rachel.
Yeah.
If, this design that we're looking at
Yeah.
is a total of 14,000.
14,000, forgive me, I misstated. Yep.
200 square feet.
But
How does,
2,000 that's not really usable because it's the basement space. So it's
Oh,
12,000 square feet of functional program space.
so it's minus 2,000. And what is the current senior center total square feet?
The current senior center, including the basement, is about 6,000 square feet. Each floor is just a little under 2,000 square feet. But that's not 2,000 square feet of program room because you have the circulation, the hallways, the elevators and stuff like that. So, but that gives you a rough idea. It's about 6,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in this concept here, because you don't have, you still have the ramp, but you have an opportunity maybe for a little more program space up the back. Not a lot, but that's because of the smaller footprint. It's just something else.
Does our current 6,000 square feet include storage?
Yeah.
Closets?
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, like we have 6,000 square feet, but usable programs is less than
Yeah,
that.
it's not very much. Yeah,
It's where,
Yeah,
you know,
it's not a lot.
so I'm curious. So do you know what that square footage is now in our current center?
I do have that information off the top of my head. I wouldn't want to give you the wrong number,
Okay.
but I'm happy to.
Yeah, I would be curious.
Yeah.
And just reaction again, I don't see the room for growth in some things, like in the big room, 1,000 square feet. I mean, I've seen pictures of line dancing, for example, and the line kind of fills the room. So where's what growth factor are we assuming we need to have, and how many years out do we imagine that's going to last us? Because I'm assuming it could be 5 years from today
Yeah.
before the doors fully open. So already we've grown quite a bit more.
Great use for the gym.
Well, I know, there's no gym in this.
I know.
Yeah, that's what concerns me about some of these is, I'm sort of like, well, it'll be nicer for sure, but will it really accommodate the issue of growth? That's my big concern.
That's an excellent point, because many years ago, an architect told political leaders at the time that the present building we're using is too small.
Yeah.
Nobody listened.
I know.
No, I'm
So I've heard, I wasn't there.
I'm just joking. Okay, so these are the concepts. Sorry, go ahead.
Jane, you had a question?
But I just have a quick question, which is probably not addressed yet. But I'm noticing the addition, that's a flat roof.
It's a flat roof in this concept. We could look at what that might be. It's not hard and fast, it's a flat.
Okay, I'm just wondering, is air conditioning, et cetera, going to be placed on the roof? Is snow and weather conditions being considered?
Yeah, we would definitely look at that, but that's a great point, that right now, most of your air conditioning units are on the ground, taking up precious space. In any of these concepts, whether it's a flat roof or a gabled roof, we would look to relocate that stuff inside the building or up to the roof, and that would help you in terms of using the space outside.
Any possibilities of green space open?
We could do that too. We could look at like terraces or green
It's a
roof.
flat roof, then you
Yeah.
can do that.
The flat roof gets very heavy from snow.
That's the other
It doesn't
consideration.
slide off.
Yeah, it's
Flat roof is, you have to have that,
maintained.
huh?
Maintained.
Maintained. You have to have good support for it.
It's the new senior exercise winter program. Don't get a shovel.
Volunteer.
Those are the Pleasant Street concepts. Moving on to Oakland Road. Oakland Road, it is a community center concept with dedicated senior space. So there's no just senior center concept for Oakland Road. Oakland Road, you're all familiar with it. It's got a lot of topography. It's got basically the center portion where you see the building sited, that's the flattest area, and then it's almost like a valley and it goes up on both sides a little. In this concept, we're taking advantage of the flattest area to site the building. There would be cutting and filling, in other words, retaining walls and moving earth around to get things flatter and bigger for a footprint. And then we have parking at 2 levels. We have parking at a lower level. And the lower level is the senior center level. And then you have parking at the upper level for some pickleball courts. And that could also be an entrance to the upper level gym. And that's something I think is really kind of advantageous about the site. There's an opportunity with the topo to do something really interesting where to create that dedicated senior center portion of the building. Basically, it functions at the lower level. And then the upper level are all the other program spaces associated with rec department. So it's a really nice way to segregate the 2 uses, so the 2 departments. Parking spaces here, pardon me, I'm gonna just read off the screen. It's 65 to 22, so you're about 88. I'll be honest, I'm gonna throw my boss under the bus and he's gonna hate me. I think we should be reducing the amount of parking because we have parking across the street. He wanted to show that, again, what is possible at this site, and I understand where he's coming from. But
You can't have elderly people with walkers or canes parking across the street.
I agree, but you could use that parking for surge parking, and then you have more green area over here, because it's always a trade-off, right? And there's a cost associated with asphalt as well, financial cost, but also environmental cost. So I'm of the mind, try to be as minimal with your footprint in terms of parking as possible. But in this concept, we're basically showing you need 90 spaces, we can get you 90 spaces on the site. If you had a fight with the high school and they said, no, you can't use our parking lot, you're okay. I'm being a little silly.
So
I'm trying to understand what's lower level, is that?
Yeah. Let's go, so let me just, go back to the site plan for just a second, so. You've got Oakland Road here, Oakland Road is going uphill in this direction. You come in at the lowest level of the site, this would all be flat, and this is about 65 parking spaces. You have the building footprint, which is at this level, and then the second floor is at this level up here, where you have a second entrance and parking. And if you go to I'll show you a section that's cutting through. So basically, lower level parking, this entire floor is the senior center. Upper level parking and pickleball associated with all the program rooms on the second floor, which would be community rooms, recreation rooms, it would more general public rooms. If that makes sense.
that's kind of nice because seniors would have one parking lot. Anyone else, recreation would have the other side, parking lot and separate entrances.
Yeah.
Also keep in mind, my figures are probably slightly off, but with the concepts at Pleasant Street Center that we just saw, and with street parking, you're probably around 60 spots or 60-ish. And this right here, we're already at 87. So it gives a lot more parking. And then that doesn't include possible Oakland Road parking or overflow in the high school.
I'm still trying to understand the diagram. The first floor is showing.
Let's go to the first floor, yeah.
Is showing the gym.
Yeah, so
So
you're-
that's not dedicated seats.
that's not dedicated to your street, you're right. So in this concept, you're coming in off of you've got the parking lot right here, you're coming off of the main entrance.
Yeah.
You walk into a generous sized lobby, again, it's a double height space, you can see upstairs, you can see the activity going on. You walk through these doors here. This here is your dedicated senior space, and it is all on that main lower level.
So we got a multi-purpose room and a game room, and that's it,
And a lounge and
which
offices.
isn't dedicated, the lounge.
No, this lounge here, for me, in orange here, this is senior, when you're walking behind these, beyond these
Isn't
doors,
that a lot less than the space we use now in the senior center?
in terms of,
Program space.
so then you go to the second floor and there are those spaces that are shared. In the program that we had discussed last time, I think we had identified 2 to 3 program rooms that would be dedicated senior. If you're telling me that you want to see this on this ground floor concept here, I can make that happen. The point of this,
I'm just trying to understand it right now, that's all. I'm not saying I want this or
Yeah.
that, I'm hearing one thing and I'm saying another, it's because I'm not understanding. that's
no,
all.
forgive me if I'm
No.
not using the correct terms. But so let me just walk you through this one again so you understand the layout. So you're coming in the main entrance, you have the parking there at the lower level, lobby, you've got a reception desk here. That reception desk both looks out into the main lobby and into the senior center space. You've got offices for seniors. You've got the game room, the multi-purpose room, a larger kitchen, bathrooms here. And then you have bathrooms here out in the main space that are associated with the gym, so that they don't have to go into the senior center area to use this bathroom. You've got a stair and an elevator. They're gonna take you upstairs to the next level. So if you wanna go to the next. Okay, and so the next level, again, you have that double height space, so you can see down below like a balcony. And then up here are the rest of the program. Then you have offices back here. This is the parking lot for the pickleball. So you have a second way in and out of the building. So you'd have a second receptionist, someone to greet people as they're coming in at that level. And this is getting you access to the walking track.
But are those dedicated program rooms for seniors, or they're pink, so I don't know.
Those would be shared. Those would be shared
Shared.
program rooms. They're not within that.
So we have a much smaller dedicated space than we currently do.
Also keep in mind, just because they're labeled this way, doesn't mean we can't switch up.
No, I
Let's-
understand, I'm just trying to understand the picture, that's all.
I guess,
So they could be dedicated by hours.
Right.
Too.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like,
Because you know, that 8 o'clock to 1:30 or.
like Randolph had during the day, 8 to 2:30, I think it was, or 3, the entire building was just seniors. And then after that, anyone could use it. But even after that 2:30 or 3 o'clock hour, they had, I think, 2 or 3 just dedicated space for seniors where they could go in and play billiards and
Okay.
stuff. And then, but when we were there, there was only seniors using the entire building. No
During-
children were running around or.
During the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, so I think one way to think about it is the spaces currently in this concept that we're showing the second level are shared, where the spaces on the lower level are dedicated. You have to go through a door to get to the senior space, and that is senior controlled, if that makes sense. The multipurpose room maybe for special activities is rented out or used by another community member, but it's really your space.
Has it been taken into consideration if you're saying dedicated timeframes? School release time, parking, traffic, et cetera, into this plan?
So in terms of parking and traffic, we would look at that in more detail. And that is something we've talked about, and it should be looked at this. You have to figure out how you're gonna be a good neighbor with the high school.
Could we put the gym up on the second floor and use all that space to make dedicated senior first floor? And put the gym up on the second floor and have the rec up there?
We could certainly look at doing 3 levels.
Oh, no, it's still 2 levels. It's just take out the open to below. At the walking track level, make that a gym.
At the walking track level.
Walking tracks above,
Pardon me?
walking track is above.
I understand. Fill it in, make a floor and have the gym up there, give up the walking track, but. And
So move the gym to the second floor, you're saying?
yes, and then we'd have all that space for senior space and we could have a true first floor senior space.
But what about the impact of the basketball court to the lower level?
I don't think it's insurmountable. I can look at it. I mean, it's an
It's just
interesting
the
concept.
thought.
Yeah.
This to me feels small.
I do like the idea of a walking track because winter is the time that most seniors decline because they don't move enough. So keep that in mind, like, once it starts to get cold, usually about 3 months, there's a lot of seniors that you don't see for 3 months because they just don't come out.
I like it too. I'm just looking for more space for the seniors. Again, that growth thing, we need more than we currently have. And I'm worried in this model.
Well, and I also think that part of the existing senior center, as small as it is, crowded, there's a lot of interplay among the people who come. So you might be in exercise class, but you see the people coming down from XYZ activity and you know them, and then you meet their friend. So what worries me about this layout is I just don't see the camaraderie if happening in this kind of layout with the program rooms all upstairs.
Okay, yeah.
Or on a different floor.
Also, couldn't you put a walking track outline on the gym floor and have hours that are for the walking track?
Certainly, yeah.
Like at the malls, they have hours that people can go walk at Burlington Mall, you know?
Not,
What was the total space minus the gym?
it's about 15,000 square. If you wouldn't mind going back to the site plan, I just want to note one thing. So constraints of the site. You've got a hill here. It starts to go uphill here. And then you have neighbors. And I think because you have residential neighbors rather, it's a nice idea to be a good neighbor, to locate the building as centrally as possible, to allow for as much buffer for them. Not to say that this footprint couldn't be larger, it certainly could. The site starts to slope a little here, so it just means more earthwork, if you will. And at this point in the design, in our feasibility study, again, we're showing you it's possible. Then we'll put a price tag with that concept, and then you can decide, yes, spending money on moving earth around at this site is worth it. Or I'd rather spend that money on a parking garage, Pleasant Street, or you get the idea.
On that note, there's a huge amount of construction going on over there. Do we know what that is?
Do we,
Is that the water tower?
I don't know what it is. There's heavy-
Right now, they're doing construction on the water tower.
There's heavy equipment, the trees are all down, they're flattening
On
land.
Oakland, on that street?
I don't know if it's
I think it's on
inside that plot plan or outside, but it's
Is it
right
by
over
the
there.
high
You can
school?
see it. If
Not
you're-
inside that plot plan.
If you're sitting on the drive through the trees, you can clearly see it on the backside. I don't know what's over there.
It's probably the water tower in the back, which is finishing up. There's a park going in there, and that should be finishing up.
Okay. Parks are nice.
The other, I mean, pro or con, but we do have a lot of seniors that utilize the Y for swimming and stuff, so this is close to the Y. We also chatted, I think, about a week ago about, I don't know, pro or con, but we have, since we're next to the high school, I mean, recreation, I think, uses the high school gymnasium now too. That doesn't have to stop. And the performing arts place or at the high school could be pretty beneficial, especially for seniors if we want to, you know, like in the evening. So you got to think about what's, you know, being close to the Y, being close to the high school does, I mean, yes, there's children, but also I think there's some added benefits for older adults if we continue to form a firm partnership with the school system and the Y.
There's already a start to the nice walking path down there at Birch Meadow that we hope to keep going. And then there's also a walking path out here that I didn't speak to yet.
yeah,
It's
so
also cool.
in terms of the program, the outdoor amenities, exterior programming, we're showing 4 pickleball courts. And then the gray line that you see going around would be a circuit trail. So a pathway, yeah. So trying to take advantage of this beautiful wooded area. There's also opportunities. We're showing a patio or a terrace off of that multi-purpose room. It's back in a more private part of the site, which I think is really lovely. And there's certainly opportunities for smaller program elements like this could accommodate a bocce court. This could accommodate like a community garden or some sort of smaller garden element. So there's opportunities on this site that for the concepts for Pleasant Street.
How close is Route 28 or the right side of that design? Is Route 28 pretty close that we can get an exit? I know you can't go both north and south, but probably south on Route 28 exit that way.
I'm gonna go down this.
You gotta go out Oakland Road and then out,
Yeah.
Birch Meadow.
So the rear part of that land is not close to Route 28?
No.
Other houses on one side.
But it's very close.
You gotta go down to Birch Meadow and then Birch Meadow out to 28.
Rachel, can I ask you a question on this? So
Yeah.
just to give people some ways to view this. So let's call it the program spaces, not the gym. Each floor of that program space that you have there is approximately what would you say?
7,500 square feet.
So about 15,000 between the two.
Program space.
Program space.
It's not including.
And the
storage.
office.
No.
Well, no, it does, it's a footprint.
Is that the I'm wondering
Yeah.
footprint, right?
Footprint of each of, this concept is,
So it's full.
gym, the 7,500. This rectangle here is the exact same
That's
size,
not-
so
that's
it's
not space.
also 7,500. Yep. And then you have the hyphen, if you will, the building that connects us.
So when you compare that to what you just saw over on the Pleasant Street Center, the footprints of that, of those pieces that you were looking at, total, I think, between the 3 floors were like 14 or just shy of that.
In one of the concepts, yeah.
And one of the, and that's actually in the main, well, in the last 2, putting the gym one aside.
Yeah.
So and that's on 3 floors spread out in different areas. So the perspective of not having that interaction, I think you have to understand, you're looking at that, you might say, oh, well, yeah, it's on 2 different floors, but Pleasant Street Gym had 3 different floors and you're going to have maybe 5,000 square feet here and 2,000 square feet here. So it's a lot more disjointed. And again, that's not a criticism. It's just, that's the way it is.
There are going to be pros and cons to all of these concepts.
Right,
yeah.
but I just wanted to, so, when you talk about, oh, well, let's make that whole first floor 15,000 square feet, because that's essentially what you're saying, that's a different perspective. And the other thing is we did spend a lot of time, well, not a lot, but we spent time talking about this question of, which of the items should be quote unquote dedicated senior space versus those that could be flexible and used. And I think the point of timing is also critical because you might have an area where the whole place would be dedicated to a certain point, and then after certain areas are dedicated and others become flexible. I mean, that was really the intention of the idea of this shared community / senior center. Now, it may be difficult to really envision that at the Pleasant Street Center, given the small spaces, but that was still the concept there of having those types of spaces. And the last thing I wanted to mention, I didn't want to get too much into this, but when I know, Rachel, when you guys presented, kind of talking about numbers of spaces, you were talking about comparable communities in terms of numbers of seniors and what spaces have been done.
Yep.
And these numbers, 14, 15, 16,000 square feet, are right in that sweet spot of many of those other centers. Now, I realize the point about growth, but that's kind of where our target has been in terms of what we've asked them to look at the moment. So
What are those towns, by the way? What is the basis of that?
So the other towns we were using as a precedent, if you will. And again, I'm speaking to the projects that we have done, because I know you've looked at so many different centers done by other firms. So Randolph would be, I think, a comparable size. Newton is larger, but I think still gives you an idea of what a community center with a gym would look like. They're Situate, I think, was also comparably sized.
And are those the places that were used to come up with that spreadsheet where you have all the numbers that you're saying this is a reasonable number?
Yep, and then
And do we know their population sizes?
it's a good question.
Okay.
You put me on the spot if I had to.
Okay,
Yeah.
you don't have to answer it right now, but that's my question. I'm up,
we did look at some of that at the time, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head either. But that was actually the question I remember sitting there having that exact same question, like, okay, where do we target based on all of these needs? And I mean, the other piece that we is the elephant in the room is where's the trade-off of cost? That we haven't really got to yet.
And those are always good places to start, I just want to say.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's anything bad. It's just,
No.
I just didn't know what they are. 'Cause I
Yep,
didn't see
no,
them
I
documented.
understood.
I just want to, I always like to make the point that what works for another town is not what Reading wants nor needs.
Randolph is
didn't you say-
34,000.
Rachel, didn't you say before you didn't do such?
I did do Situate. Situate was a project that we had worked on.
Because when you said no the last time, the question was asked.
And maybe it must have been another town, or maybe I misheard you, but we did do
She
Situate.
didn't
Yeah.
even need them.
Situate. Yes, forgive me. Our firm did need them. I did not personally work on that one. I did do a study for them recently where I helped them reconfigure spaces. So I know that space rather well just from that exercise. And I get to be critical of that space because I didn't work on
Because
Do we have any information as far as, like, when these centers were redone and, what was their increase in participation once the size increased?
That's a great question. I don't know if Joel, if he was here tonight, he might know that better. He's a good numbers guy, not to be stereotypical. But we certainly can get that information.
That would be
Yeah.
really helpful.
build it and they will come.
No, but it's a great question, and it always happens.
Yeah.
But you wanna know, like, the meal program at Situate previously, when they had this rinky-dink tiny kitchen, was 10 people a week, and now it's 5. I'm making that up, but that's what you're talking.
In the
So
case of
Randolph
Situate,
is-
It increased them immediately. They wound up, they hired a chef and the biggest problem they had was they needed a second chef. They had to hire a part-time chef to go in there. And their gym area they figured out was way too small because they just had such a tremendous amount of people looking for the gym.
Wellesley, I just learned in Wellesley, they built a community center and they used it for a while and it was combo and they decided they needed a senior center, so they just went ahead and in addition now have had to build a senior center. They're very happy.
Randolph is about 34,000 folks. Situate is about 19,000 and Newton's around 86,000 people.
This is total population.
Total population.
So Newton's an outlier, but they're doing a new combination center.
Can you say that again, Chris?
Randolph is 34,000 roughly.
Yeah, I know.
Situate is around
Cool.
19,000
Right.
and Newton's around 80,
Yeah,
86,000.
Yeah.
Also keep in mind, folks, sorry, Mark, go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, Chris, do you remember, did you write down the numbers that they said of visitors that they had in Randolph? I
I
thought
have to
that,
go back, I have
yeah.
to go back to my notes and I don't remember.
I thought that it was less than I would have anticipated. I thought our numbers were favorable by comparison,
For
but maybe I'm
Randolph?
not remembering it right. Yeah, yeah, and it, based on, the number of people we have in the community and kind of our participation, I thought our current numbers are pretty good. My point being that I think people are coming for different things at different times at Randolph. When we were there, it was not packed by any means, but there were activities that were definitely going on and very, very active, but there was space available. And then as the day goes on, as they explained to us, things change over quite a bit. There are a lot more kid focused activities because it's community center focused that way. But they had, plenty of different activities by room that they could accommodate people, really nicely. So I hear the discussion of, hey, we're going to get more participation. I think we'll get people from other communities that want to participate also. And that's a discussion that we can get into later because the way Randolph deals with that is with membership fees and things like that. So it's something I think that we can manage. We're trying to right size, I think, and we have to define what right size means.
I mean, you got to remember now, our numbers do include some folks from outside of Reading. So, a lot of this is going to come down to our policy. And policy is really going to have to be examined, especially if we get a new building and what that looks like.
Everyone's gonna wanna come.
Yeah. I just talked to Wilmington a week ago because they're building a brand new center and they said, once they started building, they were really impressed by how many 50-year-olds called because the 50-year-olds want to go there now.
How big is Wilmington?
I'll have to go back and look. The other thing is, keep in mind, we are doing intergenerational programming now and rec programming in the evening. And we do have a pretty good sized chunk of seniors that really like doing that. So, even though we'll have our own dedicated senior space, the upstairs space, it's not all seniors are going to be like, oh no, keep the children away. I think there's going to be you'd be surprised, the good portion that really just enjoy being around the children. And, and some like to be around, they've been loving the bridging generations with just the high school students.
Yes.
And then I have another group of people that have been loving the recreation, which is typically the smaller. So right now we have just dedicated seniors. They like to do their own thing. I have a pretty sizable group that likes to do younger kids activities. And then we have a group that's pretty sizable on just high school. And right now we're catering to all three of those. And it's working pretty well. And we're just in the Pleasant Street Center.
One question in light of Randolph is Oakland Road, given its proximity to the high school, I would imagine would have a feel, if you will, or a concept similar to Randolph. Because Randolph really does feel like a teen center in some aspects. Like it has a video game room, if you will, it has a teen room almost. It's really trying to, that when they say multi-generational, they're really trying to target that younger demographic. Pleasant Street, given that it's not that close to the high school, you wouldn't think would be attractive in that way, likewise Simon's Way. It's just something to think about in refining the concept at Oakland Road. Like, do we want to dedicate a teen room in this concept or something to that effect?
What's nice about this site is that it really centralizes the whole community activities in the area. All the fields in the area, all the
Well, the nice thing,
guards, all of that.
I mean, the seniors can utilize, like, let's say the soccer fields. I mean, I'm sure there's some older adults that would like soccer or the pickleball court and the new Birch Meadow design, whatever you guys fit down. I agree with Ron, like, it's could be a really amazing campus type.
Almost, yeah.
Yes.
You have the Y with swimming pool, weight, fitness, high school.
The thing that I don't know how to know if I would see it or not, because I'm not criticizing, just raising my thought. In a senior center, is it being an environment where someone who is socially and or physically more fragile than in earlier stages of their life is looking to know that they are in a support environment. And these, particularly as we get into Oakland and more so even on Simon's Way, they feel more like a gym to me. And it's not that I'm not welcome in gyms. I just don't feel the kind of camaraderie. And I think it's what you were saying, Nancy, about who are you just gonna bump into just because of foot traffic and things. And I think I would love to see it designed in a way. And again, remember, senior needs were first. I'm not neglecting the rec center. I'll be at the first line, especially put my swimming pool in. I'll be there and enjoy it. But meeting fully senior needs that are not yet met or not going to be able to be met with growth. I want somehow to see a reassurance that it's there. And it's not just that we're fitting it in, and it's not these are your hours, and it's not just these are your hallway. This is a building that's dedicating sincere support to senior needs and awareness. And I would see it as having more to offer just because of space, if nothing else, than currently we have. I want to see a whole wall of senior information stuff. We've talked about that. And it's not saying it can't happen here. I'm just not seeing it communicated yet in the diagrams, and maybe it can't in the diagram. I don't know. But I'm not hearing it in the conversation. I'm hearing more about activity, this activity, and it feels more like, yeah, I go to Arlington all the time to their community's education stuff. And that's what it is. It's go there for this class and there, and it's like going to school, and it's great for going to school. But it's not a community where I'm feeling community with other people at all, except maybe the ones in my little room. And I'm looking for something that will foster that. So
That's interesting. I don't see it that way at all.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do.
Yeah.
I can see your point,
yeah.
but I don't,
My hope is
I
like,
see it the complete opposite.
my
What do you
hope
mean
is
by
like,
it? The diagrams are the goal.
Yeah, so I think your point of the Pleasant Street Center, you think the Pleasant Street Center is a better, more welcoming spot
At the
for
moment.
seniors.
Yeah.
I don't see it like that at all. Yeah,
Remember,
it's very
because
limited. You don't have enough,
Oh,
you don't have
it's
parking,
limited. It's
you don't have
limited.
outdoor space, you
It's
don't have
limited.
pickleball sports, you
There's
don't have
no
a walking
question it's-
path.
There's no question it's limited, but
Yeah.
it's got a message. It's got a message that, for better or worse, with what we've got right now.
And I think it comes down to maybe like the senior center or the community center. That's what I'm hearing. Because if this was just a dedicated senior center, would you feel the same way with the layout? Do you see what I'm saying?
If
Like
it
if
were
this was all dedicated to seniors, you wouldn't be saying that. Would you like this location better than Pleasant Street?
If this, actually, even if just the whole first floor, including the gym space, were dedicated to seniors, I'd prefer it to Pleasant Street.
Okay.
also, I think what's hard is with this concept, by just looking at it, you look at the first floor and a good chunk of it's offices.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that says we can't move, let's say we just move those offices upstairs and get rid of the arts and crafts room and move the arts and crafts room
Yeah.
downstairs.
Yeah.
So the second floor looks like the first floor,
That could help.
you know, so
Yeah.
think of it that way, like go to the second floor and just say, just imagine that's the first floor right there.
Yeah.
And then the second floor is the first floor.
It could be that.
It's a little, that I think, that's a good way to look at it is imagine that's the first floor of senior dedicated space.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
Personally, I would feel better.
And then this is the recreation. Yeah,
Oh,
Michael.
Mark has,
Mike.
Michael. Thanks, John.
I
Michael?
think the social.
Oh, hi,
Go.
guys. Yeah, I just want to say that one of the things I liked about this was the entry lobby reception area. Then you go into that lounge, which is on my screen is sort of a beigeish yellow orange. Um,
Salmon.
that's a nice big lounge area. I think that's 1,000 square feet. That's a pretty good sized piece of real estate. And then you have a multi-purpose room, 2,400 square feet, that's partitionable. And then the terrace area that sort of gets you to an outside place that overlooks some beautiful wooded area. I thought that this really had some really key locations for communities, a senior adult community reception. Whether you want the office space on the first floor or the second floor, whether you want arts and crafts to be dedicated to seniors. I don't think that's necessarily a teen thing. I think it's probably is an adult thing. There is another demographic other than just kids, teenagers, and seniors, which is adults, 20 to 60, that also need some space. So I like some of this space. I think it's a big improvement over the Pleasant Street Center.
I think don't just make sure you don't get caught up on like first and second floor, because I mean, I assume these rooms could be, we wanted office space upstairs.
Yeah,
or
certainly.
like, so don't get too caught up. I mean, this is not, we can still have to decide, hey, we could just switch. I think the important part is, like Michael was just saying, I really like how the lobby and the lounge, in my hope is if you have a place, especially for seniors or whoever, you come in, you're greeted by the receptionist, but you also have a lobby that has seating, maybe some books, but also has an information place. Let's say you had 3 screens on the wall that says, hey, this is senior activities. This is what's going on in the town. This is, whatever it might be, or going on, and then the people can shift from the lobby and just hang out in the lounge and have some coffee and tea and some refreshments or whatever. And then they can decide, oh, I'm going to go to Zumba, or I'm going to go to, and I really like this, thinking about it that way, where especially with the lobby and lounge, like Mike was saying, you could have the cafe in the lounge, and people could play games and have some coffee. And I think just those 2 spaces alone can really make a fantastic place for community.
I think when we,
Senior community.
I think when we start to see, and I know this is just early conceptual, but I think when we start to see some furniture and stuff, I would find it easier to see what you're talking about.
Yes, of course.
I did have one question on the game room. I know our billiards table takes up too much room right now and no one can do a full. But how much of that game room is gonna be, assuming we could choose to have billiards, how much of that 1,000 feet is taken up by that?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So this concept, we had talked about before that you don't want 2 billiards tables.
Right.
This could accommodate 2 billiards tables, and then you'd have like a few pieces of seating around the perimeter. But I'm envisioning this to have 1 billiards table, so basically half the room is billiards, and the other half room would be
It's around 500 square feet.
ping pong, soft seating, it'd be, it's
Okay. Something I've seen a lot, I've been seeing a lot of senior centers lately. I've seen a lot of it's just card tables set up in odd places and they're very popular. So, I want things like that around too.
Dean has a question.
She's been waiting.
Didn't see it back there, sorry.
Okay. This project started out because Reading needs a senior center. And I definitely think it needs either renovation, or it needs a new building, or it needs definitely in that new building dedicated space for seniors. Not that it can't be used by the community on dedicated hours. I have a couple of concerns. We're worried about space, we're worried about rooms, etc. I have heard from the grapevine, there are many people in town that are concerned about tax increase. Will a community center, a senior center / community center, promote that to be voted on securely versus just a senior center? My other concern is whatever site it is, engineering costs need to be added to this, which we need to take into consideration the tax increase for our seniors who are going to be utilizing this. Whatever site is decided on, my concern is, yes, I think seniors can learn by the youth and vice versa. There are many youth that don't have grandparents, they don't have elderly relatives, which is very important to be active for a senior in a community. Going forward, I personally think a dedicated senior space, whichever location is decided on. That's all I need to say. I'm not worried right now about a room size, etc. We need to decide on a location or two concepts and go from there.
What type of funding is available statewide and national for senior centers? And how much clearing has to be done?
I think we will just. Yeah, I do. One thing I want to raise in discussing this site, and one thing that has been discussed before is the concept of phasing. And I will say that this concept that I'm showing you right now lends itself very well to that. So you could see building the senior center component first, and it's pretty much self-contained, and then doing the gym portion second or at a later date. Another option is maybe in this concept for Oakland Road, it's about a campus rather than a building with dedicated senior inside. So you have a dedicated senior building, and then on the same site, you have the gym with its support spaces and offices. And they're two separate buildings, they're close to each other, and they function again as like a campus. That might begin to address some of the comments.
Can I ask you?
We have another.
I'm sorry.
We have cycle
Yeah.
three, right?
Yeah, we should
So to go.
Yeah.
we should keep going.
Yeah, let's do,
It's 8:30.
Can you just before, can you go back to the site plan for Oakland just for one quick second?
Yeah.
no.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
So just, I guess, Rachel, you mentioned that this site does have a number of other challenges, especially with the residential piece around it. And one thing that I know happened recently with the discussion about pickleball courts, because I'm assuming those are outdoor courts. The discussion that happened at, I forget which, the other park, whatever, the residential feedback on that. I would be concerned that, considering the location of those courts being close to the residential is actually a detriment to the site. And you and I talked about this when we actually talked about Oakland Road in general, is that there's a lot of constraints on this site that talk about where the buildings go, where the outdoor things can go. And so I just point that out, that I don't think the answer, I don't think this, to your point, is any representative of a final solution, but those are the types of challenges that I think are still going to exist on the site.
Yeah.
Another thing you're gonna hear about this site is the fact that the neighbors in that area feel like all the sports activities that are going on now, and now you're gonna really burden them, more traffic, and more noise. So that's gonna be a concern. They certainly won't want pickleball.
Just real quick too, you could easily take those pickleball courts and move them to the lower level, and that would be closer to the road, further away from the butters. It's a good point.
I also brought up when I first saw this plan, like with the pickleball courts, maybe you do something that, maybe you don't do the gym right away, but maybe you cover the pickleball courts and install large garage doors where you could get a hybrid indoor outdoor and play year round.
Right, there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, Rachel knows I'm a big fan of the phased approach anyhow. I think, but in order to have the phased approach, you kind of have to have that conceptual view of where you think everything ultimately will
It
go.
has to be planned out.
It has to be played out. So I think that's really the challenge with this, is that, how you would look at that and then see how it operates over time, because then you might get to a point where you said, we wanted to do this, but the site's already too full, we can't get enough parking, traffic's this, whatever. So you might end up realizing that, that plan you had isn't gonna work. So,
I think the gym I would hate to see the gym get added second, because I do think that the pickleball community is just so huge, and that they would play in that gym in the winter, like year round. Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you're on the call. I'm wrong. Yeah. And I just see that also like as being an intergenerational sport, becoming more of an intergenerational sport, and also attracting a lot of younger seniors.
these are the trade-offs that are gonna have the biggest.
Yeah.
on this.
And the other
But I
thing,
understand the phased in approach, but
The other thing with the,
Costume.
In the walking track.
If you're gonna go for an override,
That's right.
keep on going back. That's
I'm,
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
I'm,
not happening.
I'm sorry, I don't want to get into finances tonight, so.
One other thing really quickly is, if you build this here at Oakland Road, that still leaves Simon's Way. So, you know, you have to we have to kind of think about, okay, you have the community center here, but you have 20 pickleball courts at Simon's Way.
Right.
Like, does that become the outdoor community place?
That's the
We'll
outdoor
take it.
space.
You know, so you build something here, but you still have Simon's Way. So could you put down there, next to the ball fields? I mean,
I mean, the concept of the gym from a senior community center perspective was to address the active seniors and to provide another resource to recreation, which obviously is struggling to continue to get space in the school. So it's not that the space wouldn't be used, it's just a question of how you allocate it and what the right approach is for it. So I still think that's a question. And that's why we talked about it as a phase two, because it's not necessarily something that's a requirement of a senior/community center, but certainly fulfills you still look at these places, you still have workout room and, those are still there. Those active components are still in that building. The gym just adds another dimension to it.
30 seconds. I know we want to move on. My biggest concern with this is that our current senior center has 6,000 dedicated square feet, and this new one will have, 7,500. I just want to be able to know a question to be answered at another time. When we say that these are going to be shared spaces or divided spaces, what does that actually mean? What does that entail? So not a question for the architect, but things that I think would make everyone feel better as far as having shared spaces. I think we almost need a definition of that and have some guidelines for that. Because if it's only to do all this work and dig all these holes and fill in all this stuff to gain another 1,500 square feet for the seniors.
Well, it's not
where's the mechanical room on this?
On the lower level, on the back. You see where it says,
Oh,
And I also don't see it that way either, because in the active hours of the day, like we've spoke about, that whole gym, 7,500 square feet, plus the other side, which is 7,500 square feet, plus the top is 7,500 square feet. So you're actually,
Right, so as long as that upper level will be available for seniors during the day, I
Yes.
think is,
yes, and it
my
would
concern
be,
probably a lot of other kids wouldn't be there.
yeah, and I think just let's use the arts and crafts room for an example, because that was in the programming discussions, we had said that is a dedicated senior space. And what I interpret when I hear that is, that's the space where you can have your quilting group and you can leave your stuff out and don't have to worry about it. That's my definition of you're controlling it. In this concept, you probably couldn't do that. And so if the feedback I'm hearing, and feedback is great, is that you would love this concept if I could get you one or two other dedicated program rooms on the ground level, then great, I'll go back and sharpen my pencil and try to figure that out.
Some of this, I think, is language. We have dedicated space at Pleasant Street Center, but it doesn't mean we don't share it with rec and anyone else who wants to use it. Those could be dedicated, which means we get first dibs and we plan to use it as part of our expansion plans. And I know more staff, more money, more. But the reality is we're growing, and to my mind, if I'm a taxpayer, which I am, I want to know I'm getting more for seniors out of this. And if it became, maybe the word is priority seniors, not dedicated seniors, but it just makes it clear. We get first choice, and sure, we'll
But
share.
we could also keep in mind, like Randolph, what we could do is this entire building is dedicated senior space from 8:30 to 4:30. And then after 4:30, the first floor is still dedicated senior space. and recreation can use second floor. You know, it's a pretty good,
But I
you
think
know.
there are some spaces that are dedicated, now there's 100% of the time
Yeah.
they belong to seniors,
Mhm.
like the senior lounge, that is not a space you wanna share.
Right.
Totally from an inclusion perspective, it really distresses that we seem to have mostly gotten into the notion of there's gonna be the senior hours. I'm really hoping we can start to overcome that in this community. There are many people who work and they need evening hours and they may want the full range of programming and they pay taxes for it. And why shouldn't they have it?
Yeah, and
So I'm really distressed to hear about the active hours, the senior hours. I mean, it may be fewer of them, but I'm hoping that we'll have a lot more to support that segment of the population as we go forward.
Yeah, and we do have a
We've
lot of.
always talked about having a community space, not just a senior.
No.
No,
We-
no, no.
We have.
No, look at your
It
final
doesn't.
report. You can
No.
see this.
No.
Look at your final report and what the priority and
What?
conclusions
Recap
was.
stressed it.
No,
No.
no.
I'm talking
you're-
about recap.
I know, we're talking about recap, but it was always senior center slash community. center.
Yes.
That was always the discussion.
Yes.
The priority has always been to identify and meet the core needs of the seniors. That was the
Yes.
first priority.
Yes.
But from the perspective of the objective as the mission was to expand that to include, if possible, the concept of a community center. And that's what we surveyed on. We got feedback on that. I'm not gonna sit here, you probably know the report better than I do, but the short story is that that's what we're trying to present here. But I think the perspective, and it's why we actually drove, if you look at the functional list of spaces, how we actually identified, no, we have to have dedicated and priority senior space in any solution that comes forward.
I think we've never understood, and we've always, I mean, the fear and the joke has always been what class, and I'm not saying it's as bad, I'm just saying. It's been the concern, is, is it, okay, we're making sure there's a piece reserved for seniors as opposed to the priority is satisfying the unmet need of seniors.
Yeah, and I think with recreation too, there's also a misconception that all we do is work with kids.
Yeah.
We don't. I looked on our website today, we have 10 programs right now that are for adults, and I think 4 of them are pickleball programs. And they're in the evenings and they're on the weekends.
Yeah.
So, recreation is also serving the senior population and the adult population, as well as the kids. And our staff works on the weekends and the senior center, so we're kind of actually working together as a team, and we're using the senior space right now in the evenings, for some kids programs, because we're struggling getting certain spaces in the schools. We don't have a kitchen, so we're having our cooking program in the senior center, because we have a stove now.
The nice thing is now, the seniors, I mean, we're sharing the space, our current space in the evening. But the nice thing is, I mean, Rex told me numerous times, and Jim, I get first dibs.
Yeah.
Seniors get first dibs. And that's how it is.
If you need to kick us out, kick us out.
Like I called just the other day, I called Ed and I was like, Ed, seniors have a program, you have to cancel yours.
But that's what I'm suggesting, and I think it's a change in language.
Yeah.
It's senior space, we get first dibs, but of course we'll share it if we're not using it.
Yeah, let's not get it cut up, because we're really looking at the sites.
Yeah.
No, this is
and
all, this is
so,
all.
yeah. But we have to get to Simon's Way here. It's-
Yeah.
So Simon's Way. Simon's Way, this is looking at siting the building on the portion of the larger wetland parcel across Range Road from the great, I'm just gonna point these elements out. So you have Simon's Way that verges into Range Road. This is the parking lot for the rink. There's this portion of the land. It's a much larger 15-acre parcel that continues on beyond. And we're looking at siting it here. I think there are a lot of benefits to this area. One, the connection to nature. We think of wetlands. I think we used for mosquito-y the other day, but they really can be lovely places. It's connected to that outdoor space owned by the town. So in developing the site, again, we're showing the 90 parking spaces that we recommend for a center with a gymnasium right across the street from a very large parking lot at the. I would love to reduce this number so that we can have shared parking opportunities perhaps with the rink so that we're reducing our asphalt, especially when we're talking about building right next to a wetland. But nevertheless, we're showing you that you can get 90 spaces on the site and then the 26,000 square foot center that we were showing you before. In this concept, you have the community center at the front, adjacent to the parking lot, and then you have the proposed gym at the back, and it has its own entrance. And so I'll show you that in the site plans. So in this concept, here's the parking lot. You have a porch, an entry for the senior center here, senior center lobby, senior center lounge, senior center kitchen, multi-purpose room, offices, arts and crafts room, and game room. You have a series of restrooms, and then you have the gym. So you can get to the gym from the senior center down the hallway, but there is a second entrance that would be for off hours, let's say, so that you could, or during the day, but you know that someone could go and use the gym and not go through the space. Then on the second floor, you want to go to the, that's okay. You have, in this concept, you have a double height space for the multi-purpose room. In other words, there's nothing built on top of it, so you can have a really tall voluminous space that could be very special, used for special events. I think that was a comment that I'd heard in the programming conversations. Again, it's cited looking out the wetlands, so you have beautiful views of the woods. And then you have the rest of your program rooms up here and additional offices for recreation. You have the fitness room that's looking out onto the gym, which I think also was a comment from the last meeting. And you have another space open to below again to help with that visual connection. So that's this concept.
What was the total space?
This is about 26,000 square feet. This one, we do have the luxury open access next to that. We have a little more space, a little more breathing room, if you will. So if, again, feedback was, let's try to get more program rooms on the first floor, that's definitely doable.
Do we not have, I heard it raised 2 years ago, the issue of the engineers were concerned about possibly unearthing toxic waste and that being a major concern. Does this not risk that? Is it not in a place where that's a risk?
So-
Because that could cost.
You want to go back
millions
to
in
the
years.
site. So I think what we have discussed is a general approach to, I'll call it extraneous costs at any of the sites, is to decide which one, we'll do some preliminary conceptual square footage cost estimates for you. There'll be a placeholder, if you will, for contaminated soil here, but you'll have a general idea of what the costs are for each site. That combined with the design that we can give you at that site will help you, and then other criteria like location and site criteria that we'll come up with, that'll help you narrow it down to one site. Once we've narrowed it to one site, we can do due diligence, like doing testing and boring at the site to really understand what those costs might be. But just to go, this area here is where we focused on developing a site. It is possible we could look at the area across the street where the parking lot is, where the sports center was looking at siting itself.
Are we less concerned about contamination?
Yes, I think the contamination we're talking about is generally this area.
And my understanding was if we do boring and we find it, we're obligated to fix it.
There are some things, so yeah, yes and no. There are some limits. You're right that sometimes that triggers issues. But there are like, how do I say this? You can come to sometimes do a smell test literally to understand like what might be out there. You get an informed civil engineer or a geotechnical engineer to walk around and they'll maybe be able to understand, look at the history of the site, get a better idea of what there is to expect.
I thought, and I overheard one conversation and I think a select board meeting, and I thought that had happened and we had been warned and that they decided to stop at that stage, just and warned us. And I could be all wrong.
No,
That's what I thought I heard.
Yeah. So, how do I say this?
I'm worried.
Yeah, I understand. We can certainly look. This is a large site. Again, we have opportunities across the street. I think, not to get into the weeds, but there are possibly, we haven't quite done our due diligence completely here. But issues with the ownership of Range Road and having emergency access to the site. So this might be the furthest we go with this one location on the site. And I say might, I really want to put asterisk next to it because I don't want to overstate anything. But whether we located it here or there, the building footprint and concept probably wouldn't change terribly much. The opportunities here are the connection with nature. So like the path that I had shown you at the Oakland Road site, you could also do nature trails like that here. Not that you couldn't have the center over there and still have trails through, but it would be nice to take advantage of that. What was another thing I was gonna say about the site? Just to clarify in this diagram, so this red line here is basically signifying what you can build on and what you can't in relation to the wetlands only.
And if we just turned it into pickleball courts, do we have to dig?
Well, that's the other thing too, is
Avoid it.
you don't necessarily have to remove contaminated soil. In fact, you can leave it as is.
Okay.
Like, it's conversation to have when you know exactly what you're dealing with.
Okay.
What's the point?
I didn't mean for that to sound,
No, you pave it over. I mean, there are certain things that they all
One
allow.
office at the Pleasant Street Center.
I'll give you an
Hey, look at Home Depot.
and I'll give you an example of like a project I'm working.
We'll go dig low.
Right. Oftentimes, the project I'm working right now, also a senior center, there is questionable soil on that site, and the decision is not to remove it and to have just build on top of it, basically, have the structure work around it.
Okay,
So
so there are ways around.
there are, but you're right about you're right about asking the questions.
Okay.
Isn't there
I mean-
another organization looking to do something on?
Yes,
something?
which is why we looked at this area here. We said, let's not present dueling, if you will, options.
Where are they looking to build?
The
Next to the.
behind the rink in the parking lot that gets you to the fields, or that are associated with.
So we both could be there.
Well, that's a question. That's there are some definitely overlap in the programs of both of those studies, if you will. Like we're talking about active living, and that is a gym in essence. But that's a question that goes beyond, that's a question for you, yeah.
John?
I don't want to stress again, we are doing a feasibility study, telling you what is possible. Sometimes the answer is it is not possible. Or that it is possible, but the costs might be great.
I just want to be, try to get it clear in my mind. You're talking about the other area you're building on is the parking lot after you go by the rink with a rink on your right, in the parking lot that's a dirt parking lot back there.
That's right.
And wouldn't that create a real problem for the rink not having enough parking? Because when you get big games down there, there's a lot of cars.
I mean, each of these three sites, they all have probably their own little bit of challenges. You look at Pleasant Street Center, we're gonna have to spend a lot of money just on the parking deck and garage. I mean, that's gonna be a very large cost on just gaining our parking. Site work at Oakland Grove is, there's gonna be some site work at Oakland Road. And then Simon's Way, there's some unknowns that could go either way. I think what's important is to keep an open mind and take a look at these concepts, because these help you get an idea, and we can play around with what spaces do we want to be dedicated? What does the senior piece, what do we want that to be? And then what can if it's a community center, what is that after we decide, what the senior dedicated space is? And this, and like I said, I'm sure, Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, like Oakland Road, if we want the offices upstairs and more dedicated space for the seniors downstairs, these things, this is the time to tweak it. So we have an idea, okay, we can do this here, or this is what we can do at the Pleasant Street Center. We can only tweak so much because we're limited on space, but Oakland Road, maybe we can tweak more and gain that extra space. Same thing as Simon's Way. We could probably tweak even more and be like, all right, we have a little bit more extra space that we can have as dedicated.
Do we want to have them I know it's kind of getting late, maybe people want more time to digest it, but just roughly see like what option the majority of people like.
Like just straw poll?
Yeah. I think that'd be kind of cool, like just, you know, and you don't have to vote on it. Just, you know, just offhand, like, what's your
Okay.
favorite one?
To me,
Out of all of them.
Let's,
to me, Simon's Way is out.
Okay.
Okay.
here, hold on, let's just do a quick, everyone okay doing a quick vote?
Yes.
All right, Pleasant Street Center, raise your hand.
Concept one,
Concept,
Concept-
sorry, concept one,
all of you concept one?
all right, one, concept two,
Yeah, okay, I'm fine with it.
concept three, all right, Oakland Road.
Is that your vote?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm sorry about people online. I'm not counting you.
Don't forget me, hey.
Oakland Road 6,
Oakland
Mike, I
Road.
think you
But Simon's Way.
Oh, interesting,
So
okay.
right now, I mean, this is not an official vote,
Right,
but
yeah.
right now we have about 9 or 10 with Oakland Road. We got about 4-ish, it looked like, maybe for Pleasant Street, and no one for Simon's Way. So, you
I
know,
think that
keep,
the biggest caveat is still all the trade-offs and the costs.
yeah.
And the cost roughly, with, if you look at the Oakland Road and Pleasant Street Center, are they roughly the same? Because of the parking garage?
That's a hard one. It's hard to come up with that number. I
Yeah.
hate to-
It's something we didn't talk about is the amount of ledge in Oakland Road.
Yeah, so we were trying to avoid that. We do have a good idea.
Dynamite.
It's basically on that plan, it's to the left. But you're right, there are always unknowns with any site, and you include a healthy contingency for any, especially if this phase of design.
And the parking garage at
And
Pleasant Street.
the amount of ledge is not an unknown. It's
Billions.
Pretty much. a guess.
Sure, but we're avoiding where it is, but you never know, like,
What's under it?
yeah, you know, that's definitely.
I'd also,
There were previous reports that had identified the majority of the areas.
I'd also like to get a big enough gym so we can get elections in
Oh, yes.
I'm sitting here.
there.
I know that. Say that again?
Well, Laura did say that she needed a extra.
I do, yeah.
Grace, excuse me. Have they, at Oakland Road, have they considered underground water springs?
I don't know.
Oh, like geothermal wells or something, or?
You're saying to take advantage of that for,
To know if they're there, if they're gonna build down, if that's water table.
Oh.
I mean, it's a question. It's weird. Don't know. So we asked the question, can we follow up with the why? What is motivating these, the preferences that people have just expressed?
I'll comment on that. So I think for me, the Pleasant Street Center, the draw is that they're already there. So there's familiarity for our senior community. It's in the center of town. It allows seniors to be able to take full advantage of the resources around town, but still allows the opportunity for the community to come in as needed. I think the concern I have for Oakland Road is, you know, I'm just going to say it, the proximity to the high school concerns me. You know, I know my daughter's a high school student. I hear about how these high school students tend to act out and behave, and I am concerned that they're going to kind of cross paths and bring that type of not ideal behavior to that area and without supervision. It just concerns me. It's just like you can extrapolate what's happening there under a lot of supervision and bring it over to a new center in Oakland Road, and I do have some concerns. I understand we want to build a community center. I do, but if it's like we're going from the high school to, and they have to make the effort to go to a new location, I think that's probably a more ideal scenario. So that's my 2 cents.
Michael has his hand up on Zoom. Michael?
So, you know, I really like the Oakland Road site, and not because there's pickleball courts there, although I think that's a nice feature if we could deal with the noise and neighbors situation. But one of the really nice things, and I like the Simon's Way site for this as well, is that there's some woodland that, you know, the terrace could access, and I think that that's a very nice feature. And the walking paths, I'm a fan of Oakland Road for the walking paths and the the wooded nature of the site. I think those are, I don't think the high school students, all the ones that I've met are very pleasant young people.
That's.
And they're not around all that long.
Family
I have
and
two.
a daughter.
Depends on the day.
I should be graduating.
You're right.
I think one of the things that I would say about the Pleasant Street Center is that I think if you go in there and do the renovation, you're not gonna be happy in the end. I think that's my concern. I think the unknowns of touching a 100 and some odd year old building. I mean, I don't know anybody that owns a house in here, but when I tear a piece of my house apart, I never know what I'm gonna find. And I think to spend the money on a parking garage versus on a building is also a trade-off that I would have a tough time arguing in front of town meeting. I think it's gonna come down to, again, trade-offs and cost. I like the idea of having a little bit more open space to build something. I think Oakland Road is a tough fit as well, but it does provide some, you know, on balance, on par, more benefits. I just think if you renovate that senior center, in Pleasant Street, you're stuck with that really small location. You're no better off than really where you were in some respects. Yep, you can get a little bit more space, but it's still going to be very constrained. And you guys are talking about, oh, well, this needs to be a little bigger and that needs to be a little bigger. It's all, I mean, you're much more constrained in what you can do there.
I feel like John's sounding like what I've heard a lot is, you know, when they were looking at building the Pleasant Street Center where it's at, didn't want to, and we were warned, hey, it's not a big site.
I don't want to be,
Now we're
sold, right?
Now, it sounds like if we go there, kind of making the same step, it's just making it. a little
Well,
bit
not
bigger.
only that, it's, where's the current senior center gonna go?
Right, I was thinking that.
But
It's gonna be a 2-year project minimally.
so those costs do get factored in when we're giving you like the apples to apples, we would.
But
I'm
at
here with that
the
rental.
Pleasant Street Center, though, if you're totally talking about gutting it inside, which I don't think happened during the first rebuild, I think they had to deal with the existing rooms. And I guess I hear what John is saying, and it makes sense to me, but I'm not convinced that would be the case, especially if you're talking about totally gutting it.
It's gonna be it's a historical building, you may not. be able to-
No, I mean, the front we can't, but,
Interior, you can.
but you did some,
So I have not talked to anyone with the, I'm not gonna use the phrase yet, because I haven't even looked up the correct name for Reading, but the historical authority having jurisdiction. This is just based, my opinions on this, the building are just based on looking at the 1990 renovations drawings and having walked through the site. And on the interior, there just isn't a lot of original fabric left, not enough that I think anyone would get, like, an original plaster wall is nothing to.
It's beyond the walls, Rachel. It's heating, plumbing,
Well, all of
lighting.
that would be
It's
brand new.
all-
I think even if we were to say, let's keep the existing building and just build an addition on the back and not gut it, we would still give you all of those things brand new. You would get a brand new heating system and infrastructure.
Do we even know if the historical place would even, I mean, regardless of the inside, but I've seen what they've done to some other places and meetings, like there was a lot of fighting about what kind of fixtures can go outside, what the design can look like, you know, what can touch what, how many parking spots can be. I mean, look at the Summer Ave house at, the one place.
I think that what we're doing now is kind of getting down into the weeds.
Yeah.
I guess my point is that I think my own personal feeling is that looking at Pleasant Street a little bit further, like we would with Simon's Way in terms of toxic, and we would at Oakland Road in terms of ledge and pickleball noise in the neighborhood. I'm just saying that Pleasant Street Center, in terms of rehabbing it or totally redoing it, is still worth a look.
Definitely.
And I will say, not to, sorry. What we're proposing is very aggressive, right? We're basically enveloping a historic building on two sides with a really large parking garage. That, because the exterior, and that is what historic, does have purview over, so it might be a non-starter. They might say, no, you're desecrating the exterior of this building. They might put limitations on, they might say, like, I could see, I'm just envisioning the conversation where they say, certainly you could build an addition, but it has to be more in proportion with the existing building, and then that limits the footprint or restricts you to doing a parking garage or something like that. And you might find that the end design after those conversations is not anywhere close to what we're showing you now. Right now, we're kind of just.
Remember a few years ago
Yeah,
during
perhaps, you know.
COVID, we tried to like get the awning on the side of the building?
We had one.
No, they wouldn't let us put it on the side of the building.
We had
Historical,
one for a
Yeah.
while.
That's why you got the tent.
historical wouldn't let us,
You had a tent that didn't touch the building.
but they wouldn't even just let us put a retractable awning on the building.
That's what I was just about to say. So I think we're at the point where you're saying, we are interested, if you said today, no, we're not interested in Suffolk Street, no, thank you.
Yeah.
We wouldn't do that due diligence, but now I'm hearing that this is a potential preferred site, so those are the conversations I will work on having.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Out of all the concepts, do all of them have a room large enough for the elections? Both sides of the field.
The ones that have a gym. Yeah, how big is it?
All of them have a gym. Does concept one of the
You got a
cluster
20
have a gym?
square foot.
Yes, concept one of the place.
Multi-purpose room, that's what you got.
Or the gym.
Yeah, or the gym, that's true, the gym is 7,500.
So all of them have a gym?
Well, the gym is an option, on these.
Like John Parsons.
They're about a 70, I think 6,500 in one, and 7,500 in the other, so those are pretty good sized spaces.
Because I think that that should be part of that's just my selfish.
And not do it at the high school?
There are other, like, voting, emergency shelter, the Pleasant Street Center currently access that. There are those kind of, considerations.
I could sway to Oakland if two things happened. One of them, honestly, right now, I wouldn't vote for any single one of these unless I understood by what percentage increase are we gonna have increased capacity. As a taxpayer, you're not getting a nickel out of me if I'm not gonna be able to have more people served. It's that simple. And we ought to have a number we're aiming for as a minimum and share it. So that's just an across the board. I think we're really kidding ourselves if we aren't planning for the growth. And the other thing, though, that could sway me to Oakland is if I saw something that to my mind clearly said senior center, not senior rooms, but senior center is here, as well as broader community center. But I want to see something that looks and feels like a senior center right off the bat. I don't want to have to go upstairs to find this class and that.
What does that mean?
Marilyn, I'm
You
trying to
wanna
think you have a sign on your yard that says kids, staff, live long.
No, no, but if I could get rid of the dogs.
But
I'd be
Rosemary-
happy.
What were you gonna ask? What were you gonna ask?
What does that mean to you? That you walk in and you see, what is, it that you want to walk in and see, not just rooms? We're gonna have rooms. We're gonna
I
have
want to
every-
see people who are my age. I want this primarily, and I'm happy to have others, and I'm not opposed to community center at all. I'm not opposed to sharing.
Yeah,
But
but you physically
I
want
know,
to
I know.
walk in and see.
I want to physically walk in and want to see mostly people who are my age. I want to see materials that are focused to senior needs right front and center.
You talking to pamphlets and things?
Yeah, I want to see if I have any kind of mobility issue. I want to see that this feels really accessible. I don't have to ask someone for help. I know where to put my walker. I know all the things that you could need when you get older. I want to see a significant presence. It doesn't have to be the entire thing. But that's like I was saying, if the gym were upstairs, we had more dedicated stuff downstairs, you'd see more of that congregation. I want to see something that feels like community to someone who's over 60. And yeah, I don't know how to articulate it more than that, but that's the reason I picked Pleasant Street Centers. If nothing else, I do feel that there. And I want to feel it here as opposed to when I go in the Y, that's for everybody. And I belong to the Y. I love the Y, but it certainly doesn't feel like a community, a senior center to me, and it isn't. but it does have senior programming and things, and there's a difference, and I don't know how to create it. And I don't know that I could see it in the picture, but I know that's what I'm looking for. So if you can tell me we can accommodate X% more people, and as a senior, I'm gonna feel welcomed into a senior center when I go there and know I'm gonna find community, then I would.
And the
go.
YMCA is a gym. Like it's a.
This is what
gym.
things are feeling like to me.
Oh, see, I
Except
don't
for the
do
arts and
that.
crafts room.
I don't
It's
do that.
feeling like a gym.
But it's the people who create that.
I understand, but it, the
People who say,
flow,
I don't know.
but the
I think,
flow and all that.
Michael on the screen has a hand up. Michael?
So I just wanted to say that, you know, I don't think Recalc ever considered the voting voting stuff. And from, you know, I've worked elections, there's no way that you could have voting in the gym for all the precincts in town. You could do 1 or 2 precincts at most, I would think. Just trying to get that out, that I don't think this is the right solution for voting.
So can I just explain something real quick? It's a matter of, there's 2 things going on here that I'd like considered. One is that throughout the country, with the environment of the elections, the officials are encouraging that elections get pulled out of schools. And that has never been brought up in Reading, has never been a problem in Reading, and probably won't be for a little while. But my thought is if you're going through this process, we need to think about the future and the fact that we are going to have to be out of the schools soon. That's one concept. And 2 is with the environment of the elections, where the election officials are being encouraged throughout the country to have a backup plan. Where in Reading can we hold elections if something happens at the field house? And currently we do not have a location for that. We may be able to use the Y, but that's iffy. You know, so again, if you're going through this process and you're spending this money, then you want to think about the fact that can we take over the senior center if we have to as a backup, or if we get kicked out of the schools. So it's just a thought for the future.
It's a great point. That's good to keep in mind. Also keep in mind, which I just thought of, I do value what Marilyn's saying is, you know, it needs to, you know, feel like a senior center and not a gym. I do think the tricky part though is, and not just here, but a good portion of our numbers are health and wellness. So we have to find a way to do, people come here, our biggest portion of people who come, the reason they come to the Pleasant Street Center is for an exercise class. So we have to keep that in mind, you know, health and wellness, like the exercise, the Zumba, the yoga, those make up the biggest portion of our numbers. So we have to find a way to make that a happy medium of making it a community that seniors feel at home. But, you know, people come out because of, I mean, not just because of health and wellness, but it's across the board typically the biggest draw.
But it's senior health and wellness.
Yeah.
If you go to the Y for the product, they also have to pay more at the Y, which I'm sure factors in, but.
Just looking at the time, do we want to take maybe like 1 or 2 more questions?
Well, I was just gonna ask, did you, because it is getting late and being respectful, did you, because I know we've kind of talked about what the objectives for these meetings were, do you feel you got?
I do. I feel like this was really good direction. I do. I think that, of course, additional feedback, you guys want to internalize, you know, the plans I've shared tonight and give back comments, but this is the first of 3.
I was gonna say, that we should
community meetings.
we should announce that to everybody that may be listening or watch the recording after that.
And they could send emails to Chris.
Yeah, I know that the,
And
yeah.
then we could throw them up.
So that,
Next week is.
Wait.
Community session.
Tuesday, the 13th, we have a Zoom one, just Zoom. And then, beginning of March,
March
maybe
2nd.
on the 2nd.
yes, trying to figure out
Yeah.
the location.
Yeah, we're tweaking the location, but that'll be an in-person one on a weekend.
Is it the same content?
I would keep this content consistent, so we're getting this, you know, so everyone's saying the same thing, but it doesn't mean I can't work on advancing some of these ideas or doing due diligence in terms of talking to historic behind the scenes.
And we're trying this because, you know, we're trying a week during the evening in Zoom and then a weekend to try to draw the public in to see what, I mean, it's great that we're getting all our ideas, but now it's time to branch out a little bit to see what does our community want? You know, and that's gonna be a big deciding factor. You know, what does Reading want? What do people want? And what do they want it to look like? You know, so it's nice that we're especially with the next two, everyone in Reading's welcome. And what would they vote for? Because, you know, all of us we've all been working really well together for the past year, but now we're gonna open it up to the community and we're gonna get a really good idea of what Reading wants.
If you're opening up a Zoom meeting to the community, most of the elderly don't know how to Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's one segment of the population too. So a lot of seniors do know how to Zoom, a lot don't, but then that's why we're having another in-person option. And maybe even adding a third.
Yeah, we could, if we want to. We're
Yeah.
trying to offer a diversity of options, times of day and modes of meeting.
That
That's
way,
the intent.
that way we can reach anyone. So if someone's at work, they can Zoom in. Saturday, people who work, they can come on the weekend maybe, or younger families. And then maybe we could do an evening or a day one, you know, to get the senior population.
Yeah.
And so we can keep getting the feedback.
Be nice to do some outreach to go to like maybe over to Reading Woods where they've got 5 high rises full of seniors and go to some of the other places that are predominantly seniors and offer to do something in whatever their meeting rooms are. So people will come downstairs to participate most likely or go to their clubhouse if they've got a clubhouse. I think you'd do better at getting access to the older people if you want their voice.
Yeah.
So good, all good feedback. It's good, great feedback. Sorry, I'm soft spoken. This is good feedback. You know, that is why I'm here today. That's why I'm, you know.
Thank you.
Nice to hear what you guys have to think.
Thank you for all the full.
Yeah, so I'm gonna leave those with Chris
Okay.
and he can have them, you know.
Oh.
You can share them however you feel, but they're yours as a resource. You can mark them up, do whatever you want.
And if you have any questions, I mean, I can take these over to the senior center. I'm happy to, you know, sit down and talk about them from my knowledge. And if there's questions that I can't answer, I'll, you know, get in touch with Rachel and, you know, so we can keep the conversation going.
It's something I can do that nobody else in this room can do. I can make a motion to adjourn for both.
I don't know where he was going with that.
There's no discussion on the motion.
I know.
Second.
It's funny how I panic and then don't panic really quickly when John says that.
Okay,
All right,
so
yeah.
I'll do the roll call for recount. Ron Asini.
Yes.
Nora Bucko.
Yes.
John Parsons.
Yes.
John Sasso.
Yes.
Mark Doxer.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael Copeland.
Yes.
And John O'Neill, yes. Recount is adjourned.
Nancy?
All right, Karen Janowski. I
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
And Joan Coco. I think she's gone. Linda Fontino. Karen, I'm tired. Karen Fontino, yes. Marilyn and Rosemary. John
Yes.
and
Yes.
Jean
Yes.
and Nancy.
Yep.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Everyone.
Thank you. Sorry, Karen.
That's okay. I know you know who I am.